Okay, so find your comfortable seated position. You can sit how you like, cross-legged, legs forward. You can grab some cushions like I've got on quite a hard floor today, so I'm actually just going to sit on a cushion and perhaps just put one under my legs as well, just to take that strain off my hamstrings. Let's roll the shoulders up to our ears. Rotate those shoulders, just getting into those tense areas, and then come forwards. And just center yourself, come to your practice. Know that for this next hour, you don't need to be anywhere else but here. So just push everything else aside, that can wait. Begin to close the eyes, close the mouth. And just take a moment to listen to your breath. Those deep inhales and exhales in and out the nose. And then I want you to imagine a ball. You're in control of this inflation of the ball, so I'm using it with my hands. And as you take your breath in, I want you to visualize that ball growing bigger, filling up with air, pausing, and just as slow as it inflated, exhaling and deflating with that breath. So just using that visualization to tune into that breath and become more aware of what we're doing with our breath. Taking that big, long inhale in, filling up those lungs as if it's that ball, and exhaling out. That ball becoming deflated, perhaps a little bit sad and saggy. Inhaling, breathing deeply. Exhale. Not too concerned today with how long you're holding those breaths for. Just really evening out the inhales with the exhales, whether that's a short breath or a longer breath. Just really taking the opportunity to slow the heart rate down, slowing your internal systems down. So much of our mindset is controlled by the physiological happenings in your body, such as breath and heart rate. And those two things are the ones that can indicate to us that we're perhaps feeling stress or anxiety. So when we learn to control the breath and heart rate, we can really start playing around with our physiological responses to everyday things. And I'm just going to park that there because that's really not my area, meditation, etc. So if your eyes are closed, just begin to open your eyes with a very soft gaze. Just let them gently float open. And the first pose that we're going to come into today is that child's pose. If you struggle to get your bottom to your heels in child's pose, using a cushion to narrow that gap is a good idea. Your choice, whether you have your legs wide open or your knees together, whichever's comfortable for you. But for a yin pose, holding longer, I do prefer my knees open, so that allows the space for my chest and torso to sink down. So once you have your position, walk those hands forwards. Starting on the forearms first, keeping that mouth closed, keep focusing on that breath. And just gently rocking side to side. A point to note in these longer yin poses is really tuning in and paying attention to any tension that might build up. So if you're feeling that tension and you're getting messages of actually, I don't want to be in this pose anymore, that's your cue to just maybe ease out and create movement, ease into those tense points. You don't have to stay static in these poses. So when we're here, you might want to continue walking those hands forwards, letting your forearms rest on the mat. You might want to rest your ear on the mat. I quite like resting my forehead on the mat and just turning my head side to side. Particularly nice if you suffer from tension headaches. And just taking the opportunity on your exhale to allow your body to sink closer to the mat. So really allowing gravity to do its business here. Breathing deeply. That sense of calm and ease. And if you want to get into your shoulders in this pose, you can bring your forehead down and rest your palms together at the base of your neck. No pressure here. This is not an active pose. This is a real resting pose. So just allow the weight of your body to open up your shoulder blades here. Maintaining that deep, full breath. And perhaps just tuning into any tight bits. I can feel it in my groin a little bit, so I'm going to come back up onto my forearms and just gently rock side to side. And like I said, that helps not build that tension up. It helps me stay in the pose longer, but also helps to go into the pose a little bit deeper. So beginning to come out of this pose, if you're fully down, walk those hands up. Bring those knees together. And apart from this pose, we're going to be coming into a downward dog between all poses. But for this one, I'd like you to come into that all fours pose. So spreading those fingers wide. We're not dipping in the back. We've just got that neutral spine, as if you could have a lovely glass of champagne resting there. It wouldn't go anywhere. And press into the mat. Just pause there for a moment. Then tick-tock your hips side to side. Nothing else is moving, just your hips. And then we will come into that cat-cow. So dropping that belly down, sticking that bottom out, shoulders back. Option to look up and grit the teeth for that cow pose. Exhale, chin to chest. Really actively push the mat away from you to round the upper back to that cat pose. Tuck that tailbone under deeply. Inhale for cow. Exhale, cat. One more. Inhaling for cow. Exhaling for cats. One more time, inhaling for cow. And exhaling for cats. Okay, we're going to take the opportunity to work into our hip joints. So we're just keeping your knee in line with your ankle, but widening your stance. So much wider than hip distance. You can turn your feet out here, flex if you'd like. For me on the hard floor, it's quite intense on the knees. So again, you can get a cushion, or turning your toes in makes it less harsh on your knees. Walk the hands forward a little bit more than our tabletop, and then just begin to rock forwards and backwards. And Good job, the cameras are off. It does look a little bit like a childbirth pose. And the reason for that is because it's a great hip opening and great pelvis opening pose. So you can keep rocking, or you can widen your knees and come down onto your forearms. So it's called frog pose. And you probably, if you were a bird's eye, could see from the top, you do look a bit like a frog. And that's what we're trying to open, is that real tight area in the hips. I'm just gently rocking forwards and backwards to ease into the pose. It is particularly tight in that area. If you get any discomfort, just come back out, come back onto your hands, come forwards, backwards. But I promise it'll feel really good afterwards. Lovely. So once we come into these legs, we're going to come more into our upper shoulders. I feel like perhaps we're going through all the animals. Got cat-cow, we're in frog. The next pose is going to be dolphin. No, it's not, sorry, it's going to be puppy dog. So let's come out of this pose super gently. Bring those knees back into that tabletop. If you use cushions, just move them aside. And we're going to stretch out the legs in that downward dog. So tuck those toes, stick that bottom out as if you're in cow pose. Push into the arms, lift those knees, bring your hips to the sky, and then walk out those legs. Breathing there. Wrap those triceps under so you can feel it in your shoulder blades. And then let's bring those knees back down to the mat. Unhook the toes. If you are on a mat, come towards the back of the mat, because we're going to be traveling to this space here. And our next pose is dolphin pose. So, I'll say it again, I mean puppy dog. I don't know why I keep wanting to do dolphin, apologies. Puppy dog pose. So our hips are directly above the knee. The tendency in this pose is to want to move the hips forwards to get into the pose deeper. Keep those hips above the knee. Begin to walk those hands forward, sticking that bottom out. Come to your forearms and take a moment to rest there. Don't worry about tension in your head. Your head can come down to relax. We don't want to be cricking any necks, holding our heavy head up. And when that becomes comfortable, slide those arms more forwards and bring your chin to the mat. Breathing there. You can see now why it's called puppy dog and not dolphin, because it's like a little puppy wanting to get the ball from you when they're desperately in that playful pose. So resting here. Just like the other poses, if you need to come out for a moment, maybe roll those shoulders and come back in. Be my guest. Listen, tune in. I saw a really, really lovely quote in my physios the other day that says, if you listen to your body whisper, you don't have to hear it shout. And I really like that, because I think all of us can be guilty of kind of knowing those little niggles are there. And rather than just paying attention to them then and doing something about them, we kind of ignore them and crack on with life. And that's when they build and build and build. And the outcome can become worse. So, if you take anything away from today's class, let it be that quote. Listen to your body when it whispers, and you won't have to hear it shout. Okay, let's begin to come out of that pose. Walk those hands back to that tabletop. And just before we come into the downward dog, take a moment that you might have to look at the screen to drop your chest down, but your arms are still straight. Push your upper back up. So it's a really small movement, but it's really nice for that shoulder area, particularly when we've stretched deeply in that puppy dog pose. Tuck the toes, stick the bottom out in that cow pose, lift those knees, perhaps step the feet back a little bit, walk out to a downward dog. Lovely. And bring your knees back down. We're coming into another animal, I'm afraid. We're coming into lizard pose. So let's bring our right foot forward to the front of the mat. If you suffer with any knee problems, bring a cushion under that back knee, or just be really mindful to bring the weight onto the top of the kneecap, so you're not resting directly on it. So, low lunge, lizard pose, you can stay here, first of all. You can be on your fists with your hands. You can have your palms flat if that's accessible. Some of you might want to grab a book or even have a cushion on the inside of your leg because you're getting some kind of restricted movement in your hip or adductor here. So just play around to find what's comfortable for that first pose. Preferably, both hands are in line with that foot. So your right foot's there, your hand is next to it. Your left hand is also in alignment. And just like the other poses, move around. Particularly if you're feeling that tension. Move forwards, backwards, perhaps create circles. Breathing there. And then if you're not feeling it, if you're kind of happy to hang out there for a long time, come deeper into the pose, but be careful not to round your shoulders and curve your spine. So one option is you bring one forearm down. The other option is another forearm down, but be mindful that we're not hunching here. Really think about that chest sinking down. If you want to make it a super active pose and yin is not for you, and you're like, come on, I need to feel the burn, pick that left knee up, which takes your back leg into contraction. So it works really hard to keep your body up off the mat. I prefer to have my knee down here, but you'll notice I'm still moving around. That gets too intense, you can always come back onto your hands, always come backwards and forwards. We've just got about 30 seconds left here. Promise you're going to feel so flexible after this session. Less Tin Man and more Mr. Bendy. Is there a Mr. Bendy? Like those plasticine men from when we were younger. You know the ones that didn't speak, they just made noises like if that's a thing. Okay, let's slide that right foot back to meet the left and just tick-tock those hips, tuck those toes under, lift into that downward dog, take this opportunity to get the movement, the circulation back into your legs in that downward dog. And let's take that left foot forward this time. If it doesn't quite get there, pick it up and put it there. That right knee's down and hook the right toes, bring that weight more to the top of the right knee. And find your low lunge, your lizard on the left side. Find it first before we start going deeper. And a reminder to really focus on the exhale and elongating those breaths in the pose. That will really allow you to go deeper into the pose. Moving forwards, backwards, side to side. Lovely. And if you're feeling ready, you can perhaps bring one forearm down, perhaps the other. Or a reminder to make it an active pose, you can pick at that right knee and make that right leg work a little bit harder for you. So just one more minute in this pose. Breathing there. You kind of see why this one's called a lizard as well. The way they walk, they bring their foot right up to their hand, don't they? Some poses, I really don't know where the animal connotations come from. Breathing there. So coming in and out as deep as you'd like. And enjoying the knowledge that we will be in that downward dog, getting that circulation back in just a moment. Lovely. So let's slide that left foot back, tuck those toes, lift those hips, downward facing dog. You might want to bend both your knees, you might want to step out the heels one by one. Breathing there. Lovely. Okay, we're going to take a break from being on our fronts. We will come back to those in a minute for pigeon pose. But we're going to come onto our bottoms with our legs facing forward. So just like at the beginning, you can have a cushion underneath your bum. You can have it underneath your legs. But first of all, I want you to really stand up tall. So really bring that torso up tall. Tuck that tailbone under. Really think about a piece of string pulling you up from your head. So thinking about that posture first, because that's important in the setup of this pose. First of all, starting in Dandasana with the hands either side. Coming back to that breath with that mouth closed. Activate your toes towards the ceiling. So we've got that real lovely length. And then I want you to imagine that you are a rag doll in a shop. And you've got that metal rod keeping you upright in your back. That's been taken out. So on your next exhale, I just want to let your legs flop. Just take the engagement out of your legs. They'll feet fall open perhaps. You might get a slight bend in the knee. Bring your hands either side of your knees, just lightly resting on the floor, and then drop your chin to your chest. At this point, if your eyes are closed, open them, and just acknowledge where you are. And then what's a really lovely thing to do is close your eyes here. And then feel the heaviness of your head dragging you down towards your legs. Allow that head to get heavy. Your shoulders to melt down as if almost your upper body is sinking through quicksand. slowly melting through. You might want to bring your hands a little bit more forward because they could act as brakes. But just slump down. It's very rare in my classes I allow you to do this. I'm normally about lengthening and opening that chest and a straight spine, but in this pose, I'd really like you to just switch off, which is why I've got my eyes closed, and it's nice for you to do that as well. Really focusing on the exhale. It's quite nice to have a cushion on your legs here so you can rest your head. You might feel, and you might have, only gone a centimetre lower. That's okay. Centimetre is better than no metre. But just going back to that visualization of that ragdoll, that lifeless ragdoll that's had its props taken out, and just slumping with all its weight forwards. Breathing there, really let the head go. Exhale. You might feel some tension in your legs. If you do, just use your hands to ease out of the pose, press out of the pose. And then it feels okay to let your body sink back in. Just taking 30 more seconds there. Fully focusing on the exhale. You find you're holding your breath, just think exhale, exhale. Breathing there. So really important that we don't just snap out of this pose. Don't need head rushes or muscle injury. Gently open your eyes where you are. Have a look around, see where you are. Press into those hands. Walk those hands backwards, your head still down. Slowly stack that vertebrae. Lifting your head up, take some breath there. Perhaps roll those shoulders. Breathe. And then let's cross that legs. Let's counter that pose with deeply folded, and let's open up. Let's get that spine strong and straight again. Coming into your downward dog. Walk those legs out. Push into those hands, really think about that long, strong spine. Breathing there. And then bringing those knees back down, we're going to come into a pigeon pose. So normally you start on the right, but I'm going to show you on the left so you can see. I'm really, really mindful about your lower back and twisting your pelvis in this pose. So you may be used to coming into this pose from a downward dog and placing your shin down, sinking down and coming into it. I'd like to be a little bit more mindful coming into this pose. So bringing your knees down, slide your left knee to your left wrist. Your shin's on the mat, but take the shin on a slight diagonal. Doesn't have to be parallel to the short end of the mat, just a diagonal. Sink that right leg back. And then just take a notice here of the distance between your left sitting bone and the mat. Mine's quite tight on the left side, so I'm just going to stick a cushion under there. And that helps even out my hips rather than being skew width and having a short left side and a long right side. So just getting comfy here first of all. And like with all the other poses, it's nice to move around here. So I like rocking side to side. But when you're ready, you can bring your forearms down, either bring your hands in prayer or your hands just on the mat, but be mindful of slumping here. Let's still have a little bit of engagement in our shoulders. So we're not undoing that opening that we created earlier. If you're not feeling the stretch along your IT band or your glutes, you can roll onto your left and bring that left shin more parallel to the front edge of your mat. For me, that's a little bit too far because my bottom is lifted off that cushion. So just pausing here. Pigeon pose is one of my favorite poses, particularly if I've been on a hike or a run. It's just so nice to get that deep stretch into that thigh and that bum. So an option to go a little bit deeper, you can create a pillow with your hands and rest your head, bring your chest further down. You might want to bring your arms fully forwards and rest your forehead on the mat. Just find your pigeon. Close the eyes. And focus on the exhale. It's one of those, I don't want to say pain, because we're not supposed to have pain in yoga, and it shouldn't be painful, but it's one of those pleasurable, deep stretches that you can get from this pose that I really, really like. But that's probably just the sadist in me. Just enjoying the weight of your body, deepening that stretch. And then let's super slowly come out of this so we don't jar anything. I remember when I first started practicing yoga and teachers would hop out of this pose and I'd try and copy. And I'd really pulled muscles in my lower back. And so once I trained, I really made sure I knew the anatomy of that, to really think about what muscles I was contracting to come out. And it's really dangerous to contract those lower back muscles when you've been so relaxed. So we're using our arm strength here. I want you to press into those hands to bring yourself up. Tuck your right toes under to again allow that space to gently take the weight off that left hip. You've got a cushion there, move it away. Bring that left foot under the left bum and slide that left leg back. A much gentler way to come out of the pose. Tuck those toes, come into that downward dog. Notice the difference here between your left leg and your right. You may have got pins and needles in your left from kind of restricting the blood flow, but it should feel a little bit more flexible than the right. Bring those knees down. And we'll come into that pose on the right. So as a reminder, let's slide that right knee to the right wrist. Bring that right shin across diagonally on your mat. Slide that left leg back. Find your pigeon on the right side. For me, I'm a lot more open on the right side, so I can wiggle that right foot a little bit more in line with the top of the mat. When you found your pose, coming onto those forearms. And then we come to the breath. There's that option to stick a cushion under that right hip to even out the hips. Or just enjoy the stretch, rocking side to side without any props. Again, really focus on not slumping in the pose. Let's keep active on that front and our shoulders. But you do have that option as we move into the pose to create a pillow with the arms, rest that head, switch off the vision, closing the eyes, and taking your focus back to that breath. Maybe taking it back to that visualization of that ball, inflating and deflating. Slowing everything down. Allowing yourself to sink down. Any tension, ease out and ease back in. Breathing there. Just got a few more seconds in this pose. Really focusing. I really hope you have some lovely music playing. I'm not allowed to. I think I'd be told off for copyright permissions and whatnot. But often when I practice my own yin, I have like a super chilled kind of Ibiza beach club track playing, and I just imagine myself relaxing on a beach. Oh, that'd be nice. So let's gently come out of this pose. Bring your hands to the mats. Use your arm strength to lift your body up. Wiggle that left leg forward by tucking the toes. Slide that right foot underneath your right hip and slide that right knee back. Tuck those toes, pushing into your downward dog. Breathing there. Allowing that circulation to get back evenly in both legs. Stay as long as you like, within reason, in your downward dog. And when you're ready, come into a seated position on your mats. We're coming into a wide leg fold. So we did a straight leg fold. And now we're going to use the benefits of that to go into a wide leg. So open up your legs as much as you think you can, and then perhaps lift your knee up one side and help them open a little bit more. I'm putting my hands behind my thighs to lift myself up and stick my tailbone out. That again helps open up. We're not flexing our legs, but they're not hanging out. So I want you to just kind of have 50% engagement in those feet so they're pointing to the ceiling, but not having a holiday. If you find that your spine is rounding here and you're like, oh, come on, Amy, fold. Bring your hands behind you with your fingertips on the floor. Squeeze those shoulder blades together and that will help the posture. Breathing there. For some of you, this may be super easy. Again, you can grab your cushions. You can make your mountain of cushions as high as you'd like and rest your forearms on there. And I'm saying higher it up because I'd like that straight spine. Perhaps if you didn't have the cushions, you then start to round. And you'll notice if you do that, it takes the stretch off the legs and puts it in the back. So either with cushions there, leading with that chest forward as if someone's grabbing your thigh and pulling you forwards. Or if you're more comfortable and flexible, you can have your arms forwards. Again, you can be my guest here to take away the eyesight by closing your eyes so you can fully focus on the exhale. And the exhale is what allows us to sink deeper into the pose. As long as you're not rounding. We did that one already. Breathing there. If this is a pose that is screaming at you, or you feel that you're upright and kind of like, come on, why are you not moving? Then the more you do this, the more progress you're going to have. When I was teaching yoga full time, my legs would be so wide and I pretty much rest my chest on the floor. But kind of my practice changing to be not as harsh, and I simply don't have time to be in that pose with a toddler, then you get out what you put in. I can't expect to be that flexible anymore when I'm not putting the time in. It used to make me laugh when my students say, gosh, if only I could be flexible as you. And my comeback would be, you practice yoga once a week with me. I teach 3 or 4 classes a day. So let's try not to compare to what other people can do and think about what you put in is what you get out. I'll stop preaching now, sorry. And then let's gently start to come out of that pose, walk those hands back. And now it's super important, I don't want you to move your legs just yet. We've deeply stretched those legs, and if we were to contract them to bring them up on their own, now we would get injury. So I want you to bring your hands underneath your legs, roll yourself backwards so you can pick up those knees with your arms. So it's really supported and gentle. Wrap those forearms around your shins and let that spine curve backwards. Rest your forehead on your knees. Those muscles are deeply stretched one way. We're just allowing them to come back together. Super slowly. Ready for when you do that pose again, that muscle memory will start to kick in. And if we gently come out of it, our muscles won't be scared to go into it. Very true story. Okay, coming in to one of our final postures. Really lovely posture. We're coming onto our backs. So find yourself onto your back. Your knees are bent, your knees are up to the ceiling. Just take this opportunity to press into your elbows to lift your upper body up and tuck those shoulder blades under. Bring the soles of your feet together. Let your knees fall out to the side. Bring your hands wherever you'd like. You might want your palms facing up. You might want one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. You might like both hands on your belly. You might be really wanting more from this pose and rest your hands on your inner thighs, on your hips. A little bit extra weight. But just pausing there, closing the eyes, deeply breathing. If this is too uncomfortable, you might want to put a stack of books under your knees or cushions so they don't have that full gravitational force dragging them down. It's just that supported opening with some props. Breathing there. Again, like all the other poses, if it gets too much, bring your hands under your thighs. Close your knees, using your arm strength, pausing for a moment before coming back into the pose. Just never allowing that tension to build up so much so that you start to hold your breath, or find yourself desperately listening for that cue from me to tell you that you can come out of the pose. Your practice, you do what you like. I'm just here to guide you through these poses. Breathing deeply. Fully. Just got one more minute here. If you want to make the stretch even lovelier, you might be able to bring your arms above your head, hold your elbows with your hands, but really encourage those shoulder blades underneath you to come towards each other. We're not pulling the elbows here, it's just a nice place to rest your hands, cupping each elbow. Just take that stretch and that opening into the upper body as much as we are in the lower body. Breathing there. And then let's release those hands if they were at the elbows. Again, like the previous pose, let's take those hands underneath our legs to help push them together for those really stretch muscles to slowly shorten again. Bringing those knees into your chest, hugging the knees in there, just gentle rock side to side. Allowing those muscles to shorten and come back into their comfort zones. Roll your knees one way in a circle and the other way. So a little bit different, our relaxation today. If you want to take the opportunity to look at the screen, it might be helpful if you're struggling to think about what I'm asking you to do. If you've got a wall close by, fabulous. If not, a table like this one is equally as good. I want you to make friends with your wall, so get really close to your wall. I will demonstrate on the box as well as the wall, but we're going to come down onto the floor. Use your hand on the wall to just rest there so you can walk your legs up the wall. Your bottom is right next to the wall. Your legs are resting at the wall. Your palms face the ceiling. Let your feet turn out. And we're coming into a restorative inversion, so all that blood is rushing out of our legs. If you have a table, you can do something similar. You can rest your heels on the top of the table. What we're just aiming to do is, for so much of our lives is spent with blood traveling down. And it's so lovely to take the pressure off and draw the blood the opposite way. If you've got bare feet, you might notice that if you've been on your feet all day, your veins bulge in your feet. And coming into this restorative inversion is so nice to just take that pressure out of the legs, out of the feet. And it's really good if you suffer from cramp or restless legs. If you don't have a wall or table, bank the idea. Save it for another time. We're going to come into our relaxation here. So like I said, let those feet fall out to the side. Let your elbows, your inner elbows, rest on the ground. Your hands either on your hips, palms facing up, or resting on your torso. Turn your head gently side to side. Close the eyes. Part the teeth so your jaw can relax, and just notice that when you do that, your whole body follows suit. Taking your full deep breath there. And if you find your mind beginning to wander, thinking, oh, that session's done, take your vision. We all do it, so don't worry. Don't feel bad. Your mind can naturally, when you're not focusing on what you're doing, wander to what's next, what you're having for lunch, what work task you need to do next. But just appreciate that you've got 3 or 4 minutes left here before any of that matters. You can take your visualization back to that ball as you breathe in, expanding. And as you exhale, it deflating. Your belly is that ball. So enjoy these last few moments. And I remind you, if you remember one thing from today, it's you listen to your body when it whispers. You don't have to hear it shout. So important. So stay as long as you like in your relaxation, as long as you're allowed, I should perhaps say. If you are with your legs at the wall, the way to get out is hug your knees into your chest and roll onto your side and kind of as gracefully as you can get out of the pose. I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Namaste.